I'll turn it over to Kristen.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for being here today. This is really exciting that all of you are interested in this topic and that you're here today. So I'll start by kind of sharing a little bit about myself. I've been practicing energy healing, teaching, learning for a little bit over 20 years now. And it's something that's been a really integral part of my life experience. Even before I was working with clients and working with people, I was intuitive my whole life. And so my experience of life was often very different than that of other people. I've always had kind of a different perspective on life experience, and I could see things, hear things, feel things that other people couldn't. And I had always looked for different avenues to explore that. And what's really interesting is that my whole life, even before I specialized in ancestral healing, I was guided into this. I was guided into doing this work in many different ways, through my own skills, through my life experiences. I've always been interested in history. I got my degree in history, and I spent a lot of my spare time doing genealogical research on my family and for friends and people that I knew in my life. And I always just have found it very interesting to trace back patterns. Where do patterns come from that we experience in our lives? Why do they show up the way that they do? And I think a lot of us that are in healing professions of whatever kind, it's easy to start working on the stuff that we know about. We can remember certain traumas that we've had or certain experiences that cause us to act in certain ways or make certain choices or whatever it might be. But as much work as we try to do on these things that we're aware of, sometimes there are just things that show up again and again and again, and we see these different patterns, and it's hard to pinpoint where they come from. And for me, in working basically on my own lineage within my own self and with working with clients, just doing energy healing without the focus of ancestral healing, what I kept noticing in tracing the energy of whatever someone was experiencing, whether that be physical issue, mental issue, emotional issue, life changes they were wanting to make that they were struggling to make, whatever it might be, tracing the energy back, the vast majority of the time, the limitations they were experiencing were coming from something in the past, something ancestral. Whether that be an interaction that that person had between themselves and a parent or a family member, or from something even further back in their genetic lineage. And then other times, what would come to the surface were things that happened for this person in a past life. And I know that we're all coming from different backgrounds, different belief systems, different traditions. And I come from a tradition of Celtic ancestry. That's my lineage. That's my magical heritage, or my, that's where the energy workers come from in my life and in my lineage, both genetically and my soul lineage. But in my tradition, looking at our soul's past and those experiences can have a very significant impact on understanding ourselves now and the themes that we're working through in our life now. So the more I did this work, just energy healing work with people, the more I recognized that the themes that were coming up time and time again were always ancestral. And if they weren't traced back, if it was just something that somebody had experienced, a trauma they had experienced in their life that didn't have ancestral roots, it was impacting their children or their family members and the other people that they're connected to. So from my perspective, all healing, no matter what form it takes, no matter what avenue you're taking to do healing, is ancestral healing. Because if it's not coming from our past, it's going to affect our future in some way. So all of our experiences have an effect on us in the past and in the future. And essentially, that's what ancestral healing is about. It's about looking at how the patterns, the different experiences that were had by us in the past by our family members in the past, and then by ancestors that we may have never known in the past, are shaping our experience now and informing our experience now. And when we start to look at the different patterns that we have in our own lives, we start to uncover this kind of blueprint that's there of the past. And what I like to call this blueprint is the ancestral blueprint. It's an energetic template. And that's kind of what we're going to get talking about in this workshop, is what the ancestral blueprint is and how we can work on it. So my perspective on energy healing, the way that I'm presenting it, is coming through my lens as an energy worker, as an energy healer. And there are many different avenues besides my lens and what I'm presenting that you can do ancestral healing through. It can be done in a therapeutic model. It can be done just through life experiences. So I would preempt any of the stuff that I'm sharing, that you don't have to know this stuff to be able to heal things in your lineage. We're presented with life experiences, different circumstances, regardless of what our awareness is, to be able to heal and shift certain patterns in our life. If we choose to take those opportunities, they're there for us. But when we're able to consciously understand where patterns come from and understand what our background is and why we experience the things we do, we can actually make a choice, and we can make that choice to work on these things in a more conscious way. And that gives us the opportunity to shift things more rapidly for us and kind of embody a life that is more reflective of who we are as a core person, as a core individual, our soul's expression, if you want to use that terminology, as opposed to our life, our beliefs, our behaviors, and all of those different parts of our personality that are a reflection of the past, or a reflection of other people's traumas, other people's patterning, other people's experiences. So what we're really looking to do here is clear out the things that are out of balance, that come from the past, and then bring them into balance with our core self and who we are. And that's how we create positive change in life. So what is this ancestral blueprint? I call it the ancestral blueprint. Other people might call it something else, but I find that this is a metaphor that people can kind of wrap their heads around. When it comes to energy healing, all things are energy. This is a science thing, physics. If you take a molecule and break it down to its smallest parts, you get energy. And all things manifest from least dense, so the energy, down to most dense, which would be physical things, physical stuff you can touch. And then of course, there's all kinds of things in between. You know, there's radio waves and different frequencies of energy. There is light. I mean, that's energy. And, you know, we have all these different bandwidths and frequencies of energy. But what informs that? What makes that energy take the shape and the form that it takes, whether that be something physical, something that's like a wave of energy of different frequency, light or sound or something like that, or your thoughts, your emotions, all of those different things. So what informs the shape of that? Well, there are energetic blueprints or energetic templates that inform the shape of energy. And the ancestral blueprint is one of the most impactful, if not the most impactful blueprint that we have, that informs how our life manifests, how our physical body manifests, how the physical experiences that we have in life manifest. And this ancestral blueprint it's neither good nor bad. It's just information. It's just like if you think of a blueprint that someone has to build a house, it is the information of this is what we need to build. This is the materials we need. These are the measurements. This is what it's going to look like. And then the energy flows through that blueprint and then manifests into whatever that blueprint is representing. So the ancestral blueprint is made up of two different streams of energy for each of us. And we all each have a unique ancestral blueprint. So nobody's ancestral blueprint is the same as anyone else's. And they're all different in each lifetime that we have, because they're informed by these two different streams of energy that are always changing. So the first stream is the genetic lineage, and that's your physical ancestors, the physical lineage that you were born into in this life. The second stream of energy that's in this blueprint is your soul lineage. And that consists of all your past lives and the different past life experiences that you've had. And both of those lineages come together in this ancestral blueprint, and they inform each other, they interact with each other, and then they manifest what becomes us and our life experience. So if you want to compare this to something that's most of us understand that's physical, if we're looking at conception, conceiving a child, you have to have DNA from both parents, the male parent and then the female parent come together, and that makes a child. And then we have a combination of those two individuals' DNA that make a new human, right? So this is the same thing, but just like a level up. It's like the energetic level of this, to where we have one stream of energy coming in from the genetic, another stream coming in from the soul blueprint, and then they combine together to form what our experience is. So this ancestral blueprint has two different things to it. There's the ancestral burdens that we have, which are the challenging things that we experience, the different things that are from our past that are out of balance, that cause difficult things, limiting patterns, all of that. And then we also have ancestral blessings that come through. And these are the things that are like our soul skills, different wisdom that we have, different things that our lineage knows. If it's our genetic lineage, things that we might be taught that could be really helpful for us, the support and guidance that we have that come both physically and energetically from our lineage, and the balanced patterns that come in through both of our lineages. And oftentimes we're kind of matched into a life or a lineage or a family that allows us to do the work that we're wanting to do to balance one or the other or both. So sometimes we'll have these different balancing things that come in through our soul lineage that we have balanced in other lifetimes, skills that we have that might be of benefit to the genetic lineage that we're incarnating into. And so we can use those skills to help heal some of the imbalances that show up in our genetic lineage. It can happen in reverse too, where your genetic lineage has certain things that are healed. And then those patterns that you're taught in this life can help you heal some of the soul wounds that you might have. Okay. So this is how this stuff kind of works together. And we're always given, we kind of come in with the information and the skills that we need in order to balance the burdens that show up in our ancestral blueprint. Okay. So there are different types of burdens, and there are three different major categories of ancestral burdens that I'm going to be talking about. And the first category is ancestral trauma. And ancestral trauma is a big one because it actually informs the other two categories. Often the other two categories of ancestral burdens can't really be created without the trauma. Trauma is some of the most dense energy that we can experience and have in our being. And so it can create a lot of fear and a lot of patterning out of that fear that we then have to kind of tackle altogether. So the second different type of ancestral burden, the second category we have here are limiting patterns. And these come in the form of limiting beliefs that we might have, or different programming that we have. And these different limiting beliefs and programs often come as a result of trauma, whether that be our own trauma or trauma that an ancestor or a past life self of us experienced. And then we form these limiting beliefs based on that trauma. And I'll get more into that as we go along. So the third different type of ancestral burden, the third category, is limiting intentions. And this one sounds kind of vague, but this comes in the form of things like contracts. They're kind of like energetic contracts that we make, things that we do to honor the family or honor a certain person or to protect certain people, maybe vows of silence, things like that, of I won't speak about the things that happened in my family, different contracts that we might even have with ourselves of I will or will not do this again. because it caused me pain before, or it caused me suffering before. And maybe that's not a helpful contract to have in the future when those same circumstances aren't present anymore, that caused that original trauma that caused you to make this contract or agreement with yourself. So those are the three major categories of ancestral burdens. So I'll talk about ancestral trauma a little bit. And I will say that I'm going to define trauma from my perspective as an energy healer. And it's really interesting because if you go out there and you look for a definition of trauma, you'll find a lot. There are a lot of definitions of what trauma is. And there are many different perspectives depending on the lens through which you're looking at it with. So, a clinical psychological definition is going to be different than a medical definition of trauma. And even within the psychological model, there are many different definitions depending on what modality you're using to work through trauma or address it. So I'm going to be speaking about trauma from an energetic perspective. And so I'm actually talking about the energy of trauma. So the energy of trauma is formed anytime we have an experience in life that's often challenging, at the very least, but that causes us to fracture because we're looking away from what our core truth is, and we start being informed by the lens of the experience that we've had, as opposed to what our core truth is. So often we'll have these traumatizing experiences, and it can be anything. It can be anything from war or extreme abuse to falling off your bike as a child, or something that your parents said to you that didn't land the right way or broke your self-confidence or something like that. When we start to take that experience that we've had and we use that experience that created fear and pain and suffering for us as our guiding light, it's not really a light, but we use that as what we're informing ourselves through and making decisions through and making choices through, instead of our core knowing. That creates a fracturing within the self. And that fracturing is what creates trauma energy. And that trauma energy is anchored in by that fracturing. And then from there, we start developing limiting beliefs, different patterning, lower emotions, and all of these energies that are created subsequently due to this trauma that we've had become anchored into our being, into our body, into our energy field. And then we have life experiences based on these different energies that we're holding in our body. So all of us have had trauma to some degree or another. All of our ancestors have had trauma to some degree or another. And whether you're looking at this from an energetic perspective or a physical perspective, there is an impact when we have trauma. So let's look at an example of, let's say, a collective trauma. There are two types of trauma that we can really experience. There's collective trauma, which is a trauma that an entire generation of people or a large group of people experience simultaneously. This can be like war or famine or some kind of systemic oppression. And then there's also intralineage trauma. And this is trauma that happens to a single person or happens within a family that's unique to that family. So this could be like abuse. This could be a childbirth situation or a death or a loss of some kind. So things that are very personal to a person or a lineage. So let's look at a collective trauma, for example. This is kind of an example of how this can show up for you if you're not consciously working on this kind of stuff for yourself. So maybe you're a person that has a lot of stuff in your house. You've got your attic full and your basement full and all your closets are full of stuff. And you kind of come to this recognition that, you know what, I don't need this stuff. I need to get rid of it. It's taking up space. It's a fire hazard. It's making me feel closed in my own space. And I'd like to replace that with something else. Maybe you have aspirations of moving someday, but it feels overwhelming because you have so much stuff that you'll have to go through for that process to move forward. And maybe you're talking to a friend one day or a coach or a therapist or whoever, And you mentioned this, that I really want to clean this stuff out, but I have a hard time letting stuff go. And that's part of the reason why I've collected it, is because I have a hard time getting rid of it. So this friend or whoever you're speaking to maybe says to you, well, why do you think you have that? Why do you think it's hard for you to let this stuff go? And you say, well, when I was growing up, my mom used to always say to me, oh, you better keep that. You never know when you might need it. And maybe you remember that her father used to say that sometimes too, your grandfather. But that doesn't seem like something that impactful. But you got that programming. You were told that over and over and over again to where it became a pattern. And then whoever you're speaking to maybe says, well, gosh, that's interesting. I wonder where that came from. I wonder why they feel that way. And maybe you don't know at first and you're like, I have no idea why they feel that way. But then you remember your grandfather told you a story. And when he was a little boy, his family went through the Great Depression. And his father didn't make very much money. His mother couldn't work. And so they really struggled to get by. And one of the things that they did was that they went through the things in their house and they made ends meet by selling or trading the stuff that they already had around for food, for clothing, for money, whatever it needed to be. And that's how they survived. That's how they got through that collective trauma that was the Great Depression. And that was a trauma. And that was something that at least 2 generations of people in your family experienced. And then the programming that came from that was passed down. And so now that trauma manifests in your life as having a hard time letting things go and collecting things, even when you don't need them, or even when you're not in a circumstance in your life that makes it hard for you to get the things that you need. You have everything you need. You don't struggle to make ends meet, but yet you're still collecting these things just in case. And that's when it's a trauma, when it's limiting us in some ways. This is an ancestral burden that is impacting our life. And this is something that we can work through and address. So another example of this, a lot of you, when we were kind of introducing ourselves, mentioned that you're in some kind of helping profession or healing profession. Maybe not all of you, but a lot of you are. And there's something that can be very common with us that are in a helping profession or a healing profession, and that we want to help, we want to heal others, help others. But sometimes there are parts of ourselves or part of what we do that we're afraid to share, or we're afraid of what we're doing, that it's going to bite us somehow, come back and get us. And this can often be from a soul trauma. Usually the helpers are not just helpers because that's what they decided in this life. It's usually something that you're aligned to as a soul. And often we've had times in our history where people have been oppressed for being healers. People have been oppressed for expressing themselves fully and not going along with what the culture says you're supposed to do, or what the government says you're supposed to do, or what the religion says you're supposed to do, or whatever it might be. And while we might not have an awareness of this from our past lifetimes, it shows up as these little fears that we're like, I don't know where this comes from exactly, but I feel hesitant to take these certain actions. I feel hesitant to say these certain things or fully express myself in the ways that I want to. And so this is how it can show up in both aspects of our complete lineage, the soul blueprint or the soul lineage, and then the genetic lineage. And so how do we heal this? What do we do to heal this? Well, there's so many different ways that we can work through this. As I mentioned, you can stumble across ways to do it. You can just do it through communication, talking to people, recognizing different patterns in your life and that kind of thing. But there are different things that I would call entry points that help you notice where these patterns are showing up. And there are a lot of different entry points to this, and there are a lot of different modalities that can address this. But some of the things that you can really look at in your own life are, where are your challenges and what are your lower emotions? Anytime we're experiencing lower emotions, they're guiding us and they're telling us that we're experiencing something that's out of balance, that doesn't feel good to us. Our body is an excellent indicator for what's in balance and what's out of balance. It is the direct manifestation of our ancestral blueprint. So when something doesn't feel right in our body, whether that be physical pain or emotion or anxiety or whatever it is, it's telling us, hey, there's something out of balance here. Something's being triggered that is part of this ancestral blueprint that's showing up as a burden for me and not something that's in alignment with my growth, with my upliftment, my joy, all of those things. So when we notice our lower emotions, sometimes it's not possible to sit there in the moment when we're feeling it and say, oh, okay, well, where's this coming from and what's happening? But if at least at some point, if we can self-reflect and look at, well, I was feeling this earlier. I was feeling angry about this thing earlier. Why was that triggering me? Why was it bringing anger up for me? What pattern is this showing me? Where does this show up in my life in other places? And then taking the extra step of, do I notice this pattern that I'm starting to notice anywhere in my lineage? Does this happen more often with my family members if you're connected to them? Is it something that causes friction within your actual genetic lineage? Because that's places where this stuff can often show up more frequently. It's one of the blessings of our genetic family. If we're connected to them, as often it can bring up where these burdens lie, even if that's very challenging. Okay. Challenges that we experience are another place that can help us identify where these ancestral burdens lie for us. When we experience challenge, it's showing us again that we're attracting some experience into our life based on an imbalance or based on energies that are in our body. So a lot of you may have heard of the law of attraction and how we can manifest things by aligning our thoughts and emotions to what we want to manifest. Well, it's actually way more complicated than that. And everything that is manifesting for us is manifested through all of the energy that we hold within us, not just our thoughts and emotions. And that energy can be trauma energy. That energy can be the energy of the different templates that we have, or the blueprints, or the limiting beliefs that we have. And so we have to clear that stuff out first in order to stop attracting experiences that are challenging for us. So if we look at our challenges and start working at things and identifying patterns through the lens of the challenge, then we can start to see where some of these things are coming from. Okay. So there are a lot of ways to heal, and I tend to address things through certain modalities that I'm trained in, that I feel comfortable with, and that I feel work best for people, work most quickly for people. But there are a lot of ways to heal. And so what I want to share first is kind of a pattern for healing that I've been given by my guides, that can work with anything. It doesn't matter the modality that you're addressing this through. If you meet these different prerequisites for healing, you can transform something. So I'm going to share those with you, and hopefully you can use these to implement them into what you do, if you're in a helping profession or in your own life, and you can develop some of your own ways of healing based on knowing this. So the first prerequisite for healing is that we have to be aware of what exists. So we have to see what's right in front of us. We have to know that there's a pattern there that we want to change or shift. And this might seem obvious that we have to know what's there, but often when we have these genetic family patterns or soul patterns that are reinforced by the people that we're around, and they're reinforced by our culture, and we don't see a different option, that it's so ingrained that it's the only part of our experience that we've ever seen. We've never seen an alternative. It can be hard to see those patterns. So really taking a good look at ourselves and trying to step outside of what is just the generalized accepted, this is just how things are, and starting to think outside of the box of, but maybe we could make it different. Maybe something could be different. That can help us identify some of the more nuanced things that we're experiencing or patterns. So the first thing is knowing what exists, seeing what exists. The second part is to trace it to its origin, figure out where it started. And this is obviously something that comes in varying degrees. If something comes from a past life and you're not particularly intuitive and you haven't had training in that and you don't know how to do past life healing work, it can feel hard to trace it back. So this step is kind of as best as you can, as much as you can within your own experience, with what your skills are, with what you're able to do, or what you have the resources to do. So if you have a coach or a healer that you work with that can help you trace that, then excellent. If you don't, you'll run across the right resources, or you'll have whatever knowing you need within you to trace it. Even if it's just, this comes from my lineage, or this comes from my mom's side of the family, or whatever it is. You don't have to nail it down to the specific person or the specific event if that information is impossible to get. And we're also not talking about dwelling or ruminating on something either. When we're talking about tracing something back, we just want to identify the origin of it and not sit there and contemplate the origin of it over and over again, because that can be re-traumatizing to constantly be running over a trauma over and over again if we personally experienced it. But if we trace it back to the origin, what we're doing is we're highlighting what our current experience is now, and then the origin of it. And then that kind of bridges the gap for the entire segment of energy that we're working with in our ancestral blueprint. So once we've done that step, the third step here is to identify how this pattern or whatever it is that exists for you that you're wanting to change, how is that impacting you now? What limiting beliefs do you have through this? What challenges do you have because of whatever this thing is? How has it caused you to feel lower emotions in your life, or caused anxiety for you, or depression, or nervous system dysregulation, or whatever it might be, physical pain, physical illness, things like that. So identifying as best you can and noticing, how does this thing that I'm noticing, how does this pattern impact my life now? And when we notice how it's impacting things, then we can make a choice. At that point, we have the knowledge and understanding to decide how we're going to take this energetic thing or this experience that's happened in our lineage or in our own life. We've decided, we see it, we see how it's impacting us, and now we can decide how we want to change it. And that's the fourth step, is to decide how we want to change what exists and what impact it has on us. And once those four prerequisites are met, then that's where we get into the healing. And in the work that I do, that can be as simple as just asking to clear, asking whatever your higher power is, your guides, guardian angel, higher self, quantum particles, whatever word you want to use for a higher power, asking them or it to clear the energy, the trauma energy, the emotional energy, the limiting patterns that you have that are contributing to this thing that you've identified. Okay. And there are so many different ways that we can do that. In the example that I gave before about wanting to clear your house out, if you came to this recognition that, oh gosh, this came from the Great Depression era, and it was my great grandfather, and he used all the stuff in the house, and that's where this pattern started. And I don't want that pattern anymore. I want to get rid of my stuff because it's weighing me down. I want to make this change. And you make that solid decision for yourself, and then you start taking action to change it. You start cleaning stuff out and you decide, I'm not going to repeat this. That can be the healing for you if that's your understanding and you're not doing the energy work aspect of it. So we can get to this healing even if we're not doing this energy healing stuff, right? But if we are doing this energy healing stuff, one of the best ways to connect and to address all aspects of ourselves in terms of healing is to include all aspects of ourselves in the healing. And that includes our higher self and the energetic aspects of ourselves and our energetic support team or our spiritual support team. And our guides, our ancestral guides, our higher self can do a lot of heavy lifting for us. they can, if we can identify something and we say, yes, with my free will choice here that I'm making, I want to change this. I want to clear all the things that are contributing to this, then they can, if you give permission for that, they can begin to clear that for you. And that can come in the form of actually clearing the energy for you. But if you're not connected with your guides in that way, or you don't even believe in guides, it can come in the form of giving you life circumstances and experiences that allow for that to happen for you. So this isn't like an exclusive thing to where you have to be connected to your guides or your higher self to get the healing. That's not the case. It just comes in a different format when you're not looking at it through that lens. Okay. So I just want to check in really quickly and see, that's kind of a lot to start. So I didn't know if anybody had any questions that they wanted to ask before we get into some other things. Nobody?
Kristen, I have go ahead.
Oh, there we go.
Amy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very much appreciative of where we are right this minute. It's a lot of notes for me and I'm absorbing what I can. Can you sort of roadmap what's next so that I can think about just to get a big picture of the rest of the conversation?
So basically, what I was kind of wanting to do is to walk everyone through an exercise to kind of see how this can work and kind of guide you through this. And one of the things that that we often hold is ancestral trauma as an energy. And it's something that is not our own, that it's energy that our ancestors created through their experience, whether that was, we're not blaming them. It's not their fault that they experienced a trauma, but that it was created through their life experience. And if they couldn't heal that and they couldn't hold that, then it often gets passed down the lineage to us, to other people. And so one of the things that we can do is to pass that back. And so that's the exercise that I was going to get into next to explain it in a more detailed way. So if you have any questions on that or what we've talked about so far, I'm happy to answer. Good.
I think we have one in the chat.
Yeah.
What about the other end of the ancestral influence, such as taking the strengths from them? What would that be considered asking help from our guides? Would that be considered asking help from our guides?
Yeah, it could be. Often the strengths are something that are just kind of innate. They're in you. And where we get into challenges with it is if we have trauma from one aspect. So say we have trauma in our genetic lineage that blocks something from our soul lineage, which could be soul wisdom, soul skills, things like that from coming in. But to give a little more detail about the blessings aspect of it, we often have, we have a purpose when we're here. We have certain things that we're wanting to accomplish in life when we come in. And part of those things are often worked out through doing this work on the patterns that show up in our lineage. Other parts of the work here that we're doing is to share the gifts and the skills that we have with the world to do what we're passionate about. What we can share with the collective to create the things that we're here to create. And so our soul skills come in that format. Often those soul skills can actually be used to heal what's in the genetic lineage and vice versa. But say, for example, this is just random, but if you say need to be a runner, for example, you need to run to fulfill your soul mission. You're going to need a physical body that can do that. You're going to need, if you need to be a good runner, you're going to need the physical aptitude for that. So even if as the soul, you have this aptitude towards running, for example, you will need the physical body to do that as well. And that comes in through your genetic lineage. So often there's this combination that comes in between the soul lineage and then the genetic lineage that allows us to physically express what our gifts are or what wisdom we have to share and things like that. And then of course, it's not just physical things. Sometimes it's information that we know, like things that we're really good at Maybe we're good at being really technically minded and kind of have like an engineering brain and know how to get to the details of things and design things or whatever. We're going to need a physical brain and genetics that can allow us to do that. And we're going to need the soul wisdom to come in, and those soul aptitudes to be able to express that. So there's often a combination of the two lineages that allow us to express those different aptitudes as well. And then, like I said, if it's not in both, often if it's a skill or an asset in one aspect, it can often help heal or balance the things that are out of balance in the other aspect of our ancestral blueprint. So I hope that helps answer that a little bit.
Yeah, it did. We have another one. This is really interesting. So if your family is stuck in their own space, how do you navigate around that to keep going in your own ancestral healing? It feels very difficult to not have that support from family.
Yeah, I can definitely personally relate to that. What I would say is that doing your inner work, working on yourself, is your only responsibility. So your job is not to force the others in your lineage to heal or try to teach them a better way of doing things, even if there is one, or try to force them to heal their traumas or anything like that. So what happens when we do our healing, we transform the energies that exist in our unique ancestral blueprint into something more balanced. But that ancestral blueprint is connected to all of the other people that contributed to that ancestral blueprint, which includes all of our genetic family members. And what happens is when we do our healing, there's an energetic template that's created within our blueprint for that healing. And then on like a higher level, this isn't consciously, this isn't like, 3D conversation kind of stuff, but on a higher level, that healed template is then offered to our ancestors or the people that we are genetically related to, including our living family. And if on a higher level, they are wanting to heal and grow and somehow do their work, but they don't know how, their higher self can accept that healed template into their personal ancestral blueprint, just from on an energetic level from the work that we've done. And then what happens is if they've accepted that healed template that you've created, their life starts to give them the opportunities. They start to clear the different energies and things. Everything starts to coalesce around that blueprint, and their life starts manifesting the different opportunities, the different shifts that need to be made in order to do that healing. I will say too that not everyone wants to do the healing. So we can't ever force anyone to heal if they're not wanting to, or if they're not wanting to do that work. But if they are wanting to do the work and they don't know how, or they don't have the spiritual understanding, or they don't have the resources, or they don't want to see a therapist, or whatever it is, they can still heal if on a higher level, there's access to that healed blueprint and they're wanting to do the work. It will manifest in their physical life without you actually having to do anything, or without you actually having to have any connection with your family. So that means that if we are not in connection with our genetic families, you could have, people could be adopted or never have known certain genetic family members or don't have that relationship anymore. But when we do the healing within ourselves, that actually is healing for others. It is healing for our lineage. It's healing for our soul lineage as well. So when we stop a pattern within ourselves, that pattern doesn't pass on in our future lifetimes, but the pattern also doesn't pass on in our physical genetic lineage either. So it doesn't pass down to our children either. So I hope that kind of helps that, because I know how challenging it can be to be in a family that doesn't seem like they want to heal, or they're not supportive of doing that work, or they're so ingrained in those different patterns that aren't healthy that you're wanting to shift for yourself, and they're not supportive of that. All you can really do is honor yourself and do your own inner work as best as you can, and be true to yourself, and just allow everything else to fall as it's going to. And I will say that often with family dynamics, there's there's kind of a line with it. If you have conflict with your family and challenges with your family, that's something that's important to look at, because that can draw you and show you where different imbalances or burdens might exist in your blueprint, that in your lineage, that you can work on healing. You can use that to heal yourself. You can say, oh, I'm noticing that there's some communication issues in my family, and it might show up differently for everyone, but everyone seems to have trouble communicating effectively. This person talks over that person, and this person hides information from this other person, and whatever else it might be. But I notice a theme of communication issues. I'm going to work on that within myself. That's kind of how we can do this. But I would say that if the challenges within your family lineage extend into abuse, if your family is abusive, there is absolutely no obligation. In fact, it's probably most healing for you to not put yourself in those situations or stay connected to those people. We never need to suffer abuse in order to heal, period. There's no excuse for it. There's no need for it. It can highlight things for us. It can show us where patterns are, but we don't need that. And we don't need to continue to experience that, because when we continue to experience abuse from other people, whether it's our family or others, that actually creates more of an ancestral burden for us. It creates more trauma for us that we're going to have to heal. And that's not what we're trying to do when we're healing. So I hope that helps answer your question.
It did. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So do we have any more questions, or do we want to get into an exercise?
It's like an exercise.
Exercise?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to lead you all through a meditation, but first I want to kind of explain the background. I started to a little bit, but we can have these trauma energies that are passed down to us through our lineage. We have our own trauma energies. We have our own trauma that we've experienced that we can work through and heal. But one of the easiest things to release is trauma that doesn't belong to us. Why? Because we can't heal other people's trauma for them. We are only responsible for what's within our own blueprint. And if that trauma didn't originate with us, then we can't really heal it. All we can do is pass it back to where it came from, which is our ancestors, and then offer them the support that's needed, spiritual support, in order to heal that for them or help them release that. So that can significantly unburden us. It can take a lot out of us that is a weight that could be attracting challenging circumstances for us, more trauma for us, and that kind of thing. And normally this exercise is a very extensive one, and it gets very specific. It can take like over an hour to do, but I've pared it down to a very short, maybe 5 to 10 minute meditation, just to give you an idea of what this work can be like. And this is just one avenue. There is a lot of work that I do with clients that is more conversational in nature, it's very somatic based, where we look at the different challenges that are coming up. Where do we feel that in our body? How are we experiencing it in our body? What parts of us are speaking to us when these things are coming up? And what are those parts saying? And how can we work with those different parts? Doing contract work of where could I be having a contract here that's making me feel like I have to agree to this thing that I don't want to agree to. Like I always have to be there for my mother when she calls me, even if I don't want to, or it's not a good time or whatever. That could be a contract you have. So this is the kind of work that I would do in one-on-ones, and it spans a wide range of things. And it's very specific to what an individual is needing. But this is a good general exercise that, most of us have some degree of ancestral trauma that comes through our lineage that didn't originate with us. And so this is going to help us pass some of that back. So we're going to be working with our guides, our higher self, and whatever your higher power is. You can use whatever word for those things that you like. It doesn't matter. Whatever your tradition is, please feel free to dive into that for yourself. And if you'd like to, if you feel more comfortable turning your camera off during a meditation, you can do that. If you're fine with it on, that's okay too. But I'd first like to just have us all sit and close our eyes, feel into our bodies a little bit. And let's take a few deep breaths. Deep breath in. Deep breath out. Intending to relax the physical body. Deep breath in. Deep breath out. Intending to calm the mind. Deep breath in. And deep breath out, intending to quiet the emotional body. We're going to call in our guides, our spiritual support team, our higher self, your higher power. Use whatever terminology you like here. We're going to ask for their support in this healing to release any ancestral trauma energies that did not originate with you, that do not belong to you, that are in your highest good and the highest good of all, to pass back now and to release from your being and from your life. So if you'd like, if you feel comfortable, go ahead and give your permission in your mind to your guides. Yes, I accept this healing. And what I'd like you to do is to picture a basket in front of you. Basket can be any size, any shape. And just look at this basket for a moment. Notice its texture. And just let it rest in front of you. This basket is going to be the vessel that we place all of the trauma energies in that do not belong to us. I'd like you to put your hands and your mind out in front of you and intend to pour everything out of your being into this basket, all of the trauma energies and any emotional energies, limiting beliefs, patterns that did not originate with you and do not belong to you from your genetic lineage. Intend to pour these energies out into the basket now. And they can look however they need to. It can look like energy, it can look like objects. Just allow these energies to flow out into the basket in front of you. Watch it fill up. And these are the energies that are not your responsibility to heal or transform. They're just weight that you've been carrying. In order to transform these energies into something positive, something balanced, we need to return them to where they came from and then offer the healing to those individuals. So we're going to call forth now your ancestors that these energies belong to. Intend in your mind for them to appear in front of you. And they can be in any form. They might look like people, like energy, shadows. It can be anything at all. Just trust whatever you're seeing. And I'd like you to walk the basket over to your ancestors and place it in front of them. And you're going to say to them, ancestors, these energies belong to you. I'm sorry that you didn't have the support that you needed to transform and heal these energies for yourself. I'm sorry that these energies were created in the first place and for the suffering that they caused you. But I cannot heal these for you. I cannot heal these for the lineage. And I cannot hold these anymore. I will not allow the patterns that have manifested through these energies to continue through me. So I pass them back to you now. And allow your ancestors to come forth, and your guides can assist in returning these energies to them. And we're going to offer them support. So you can say to your ancestors now, while these are yours to heal, you do not have to do this alone. I offer you now the support of your higher power and your spiritual support team to release now all energies that belong to you that you no longer need to carry. Ask them to give their permission if they choose to, and this release will begin for them. And we're going to also ask that any energies that remain for them that can't be released now, that they may have to work through, or they may have to learn through and grow through, be supported and guided, and that they be given the opportunities to transform these energies in a positive and uplifting way for them. Feel what this feels like in your body. You may feel sensations as the energy moves out. You may feel emotion come up. Just allow it to release. And we're going to thank your ancestors for the blessings they've brought to you. Thank them for the physical body that you have now, that you wouldn't have without them. Thank them for being part of your lineage. And when you feel that's complete for you, going to give your guides permission now to continue this release for you at a time that's most appropriate for you in your sleep and over the next few days, so that you can integrate this release in an easeful way for yourself. So thank your guides, thank your higher power, thank your higher self for their support, unconditional love, and guidance. And when you feel ready, you can begin to bring your attention back to your body, back to the room around you. Take some deep breaths in and out. And you can open your eyes whenever you feel ready. As you're coming through that, if anybody has any comments or questions related to that, feel free to ask.
I just wanted to say that was amazing for me. That kind of gave me shivers.
Good.
Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Good. You're welcome.
Kristen, I'd also like to say, echo Jones. I had shivers. I had a lot of tingling the back of my neck and in my hands. That was very powerful. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anyone else?
For me, it was extremely emotional because I am aware of the trauma in my ancestral lineage.
Yeah.
And that was part of actually my training when I became a certified trauma recovery coach, that we had to go back 4 generations. So at least I was able to connect with those 4 generations to see where, as far back as 4 that it originated, but even I know it goes back even further. But for me, it is emotional because there was so much great suffering.
Yeah. Yep. And it's easy to feel that when you're tuning into that. I mean, you know, even you don't have to be an energy worker to feel that in your body because it's already there. So it's really powerful work to do this because you can feel the impact of it as you're transforming it and realize how much these things have impacted you and all of us, really.
The one thing I wanted to share is I didn't realize that today was the date for this workshop. And ironically, on the full moon, I felt intuitively that it was time to release my family and lineage, and wrote down names on paper and did the whole kind of like a blessing and just setting my intentions. I release you from, you know, anything that may have harmed me, any negative emotions, traumas and dramas and so forth. And then just set it on fire, and then took it outside and put it on the earth, you know, the ground, and kind of like, and that's just really amazing. And then today I get the email. So it's real good timing for me.
That's great. That's great. And it sounds like a forgiveness process that you went through.
And it's amazing. I personally believe it's Reiki that has brought me to where I'm at today. So Reiki has changed me for the better.
That's good. Yeah. And, you know, I come from a lineage too, where I experienced a lot of trauma, and so did my ancestors. And the forgiveness process is not something that happens immediately. It's not something that we can just decide to do. It is a process. But when you get to that point where you can say, yes, I'm ready to release this, I'm ready to forgive, and I'm ready to have peace in my heart about this, that is truly the most transformational aspect of this blueprint work. So that's really beautiful that you just had that powerful experience for yourself.
Thank you.
So, yeah. Thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Kristen. Yeah, I just wanted to thank you so much. That was way more emotional than I was prepared for in this moment. So I'm shaking up. No, I'm shaken and I'm feeling so empowered by this. But one thing that I just wanted to observe in this moment for me was that I realized that I was raised Catholic and I'm a Native American woman, and learning to identify as a recovering Catholic, I have to say, I'm no longer practicing. My guides have been conflicting, and my higher self has been watching the conflict, you know, and so this for me today brought up an allowance that my higher self can come into the space and listen and actually hear everything. And that was so beautiful because for that alone, for me to let go of it and not have it be my burden and have to own the conflict, you know. And so now I feel that in the ability to release that back, I can enjoy myself and my being on a much higher level. So I so appreciate this. So
you're welcome. That's beautiful. And it's interesting that you say that about your lineage, because that happens. I mean, so many of us have very mixed lineages that are, regardless of what it is. I mean, for me personally, I have a lineage that's very mixed between perpetrated and perpetrators, like people that have been victims and those that have been the victimizers. And so it's always very easy for us to identify with the victim and how we've suffered and the pain, but to also acknowledge that sometimes the people that were the victimizers are also what allow for us to be here, that, you know, they're part of our body, they're part of that blueprint. And that's part of what we need to look at. And it's not excusing it, but it's also acknowledging that it's there, and that battle between, you know, that's an archetype, the victim and the victimizer, that we see throughout the collective in all kinds of different ways. But when we could heal that battle that happens in ourselves, that happens through our own lineage, that's what heals it in the collective, because we stop experiencing that in ourselves, that inner battle, and then we stop seeing it externally as well when that gets resolved for us. So that's really beautiful that happened for you. Yeah. Thank you. So if there's any last little things, feel free to share. I would like to say, if anyone is interested in further learning about this, I have a series of workshops that I'm working on my website. I did have one very large class that I found was a little bit too big. I felt like I was trying to fit everything into one huge thing. So I'm in the process of making smaller bite-sized workshops. The first one is up there, and the link has just been posted in the chat. It's free. The first one is free, and it's called Ancestral Blueprint Basics. So you can learn more about the Ancestral Blueprint. And then I'll be putting out more kind of bite-sized pieces about specific topics. So you can kind of, if you're interested, grab the ones that you want to learn about and get into that. And I also do one-on-one coaching. And if that's something you're interested in, Alternative Balance members get 10% off. So if I have space for you in the application to do a 15-minute discovery call with me, you would just put that your alternative balance is how you heard about me. And then you would get the discount from there for your sessions. So yeah. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. This has been a really beautiful experience. And thank you for being the healer for your lineage in whatever ways that you are choosing to do that. I don't feel like it's an accident that all of you showed up here today. And so I think we find the things that we need, the resources we need, the information that we need. And it shows that, you know, you are all taking this on, your own inner healing journey on for yourself. And that's a really powerful thing. So I honor you for that. And thank you so much for being your own healer and your lineage's healer too.
Thank you, everybody. So I posted a link to the Facebook group. So I'll be posting the recording to the Facebook group, as well as opening up an early registration for the next webinar, which is February 15th. It's Healthy Cleanses for Your Body. We'll be doing that February 15th at 1. But look forward to an email as well with the recording of Kristen's webinar and the links that I have in the chat. So you'll get them that way as well. So this was really cool. So thank you for being here. Thank you, Kristen. That was really amazing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you, everyone. Go easy on yourselves, okay? That was a healing. Drink some water. Take a walk.
Thank you.